This is how I made my entry to the ProductionCrate 10-second VFX Contest. So some of you may already have heard of ProductionCrate. They're an asset platform with everything from 3D models to 2D assets to music. But did you know that they also have a monthly VFX contest? I've entered a few of them before, haven't won anything. Yet. So when summer break came around and they announced this month's theme, Robot Apocalypse, I was like, yeah, I should probably make something. My inspiration actually came from an Iron Lung clip. No spoilers, but there's a single shot of Markiplier looking up at a giant eye that's floating in the air. Very Cosmic Horror-esque. The shot has beautiful cinematography, and the eye itself is very well composited. I saw that and went, I'm gonna recreate that for the contest. Yes, that is the first thing my mind jumped to. No, it has nothing whatsoever to do with the theme Robot Apocalypse. Don't ask how my brain works, I'll make it work later. But before I could get to that, I had to figure out what I was gonna do with the scene itself. At first, I wanted the setting to be like a factory, like a conveyor belt of robots. The problem is, a factory is indoors, and you can't exactly look up indoors and see a giant eye floating in the sky. So then I thought, maybe a battlefield. That fits with the apocalypse theme. Problem is, I can't animate. I don't want a static battlefield, but I also don't want to hand animate a bunch of complex mech units and soldiers. So what did I do? I compromised. I settled on the idea of an outdoor conveyor belt transporting mech units across a battlefield. Why do they need to be transported on a conveyor belt? I don't know. You guys have imaginations. Come up with some lore for me. And would you look at that? ProductionCrate has this mech model already pre-modeled and pre-textured, so now I don't have to do any work. Not sponsored, guys. Just, I really like ProductionCrate. I modeled a quick bunker, threw in a placeholder sphere for the eye, gave the shot some camera shake, and got this first test. Not a bad start, but I still had a lot of stuff to do. I googled some reference images of metal eyes, and picked this design right here. I like how you can look into the back and see all the wires and the whites. Whites? Are they called whites when they're not white? Do I call them empties? The wires behind the iris. I'm not a professional modeler, but I was able to slap together something that looked pretty okay and suitably creepy. Does it look good? No, but like any good professional compositor, I can hide that by stuffing it behind a cloud. Anyways, I put that into the emissive texture of a plane and then pushed that way in the back, then adjusted it until I was happy with the composition. I quickly realized I did not have the time or the computer power to build out a giant battlefield spread out as far as the eye could see. So I cheated and put my conveyor belt into a trench. That way I only have to focus on the one specific part of the battlefield that you see and not worry about the rest. I threw a metal texture from Polyhaven onto the conveyor belt, then used Quixel Megascans for the trench. I used the free assets from their military trench pack on Fab, just rotating and moving the various assets until they hid all the gaps, but the background was still looking kind of flat. So I pulled out these apocalyptic city backdrops from ProductionCrate and threw them in the back, then filled in more empty spots with rocks and dead trees from Quixel. I then grabbed this sci-fi turret asset, also from ProductionCrate, and lined the trench with it, because I felt like the scene was still missing some robots. I animated a few of them to turn and spin a little bit as the scene goes on. And with that, the scene was done. I used DaVinci for my post-processing because it's free, and that's awesome. I rendered out the beauty and the mist pass, which I used to add a little haze in the background. Then, my favorite part of compositing, I started to add the camera artifacts. Grain, blur, lens dirt, chromatic aberration, the works. On my first try, I overdid the digital compression and the vignette a little bit. I think it was because I couldn't decide whether this was going to be found footage style or a more cinematic look. I decided on the second option and dialed back the camera artifacts. Then came the finishing color grade, and I topped it all off with some sound effects from ProductionCrate and Pixabay. This whole thing went surprisingly quickly. I was done in like 4 days total. If you're looking for a quick way to stretch your legs in the visual effects business, do consider checking out this contest. It's great. They don't get that many submissions for some reason, so they could use the love, and they deserve it. Anyways, here's the final shot. Let me know what you think.